That's when the floodgates opened. One by one, neighbors stood up to share their own experiences with Karen's tyrannical rule. Mrs. Chen talked about being fined for installing grab bars in her shower after hip surgery. Mr. Rodriguez described having to remove a sensory swing his autistic son needed. The stories went on and on. Karen tried desperately to maintain control, but it was too late. The spell was broken. 3 days later, I was outside installing a new, even better ramp for Tyler when a police car pulled up to Karen's house. I watched as 2 officers knocked on her door and had a brief conversation before escorting her to their vehicle. The charges were serious: felony theft, destruction of medical equipment, and multiple ADA violations. Because she'd used her position as HOA president to commit these crimes, they were enhanced charges carrying up to 5 years in prison. The district attorney offered her a plea deal: 1 year of house arrest, 3 years probation, full restitution plus damages, 300 hours of community service working with disabled individuals, and permanent prohibition from serving on any HOA board. That evening, as Tyler rolled up our new ramp after a day of playing with the neighborhood kids, we saw Karen coming home from what I assumed was a meeting with her lawyer. Her perfect hair was disheveled, her designer outfit wrinkled and stained. When she saw us, her face twisted with rage and humiliation. She slammed her car door, stormed into her house, and emerged moments later with the for sale sign, which she jammed into her perfect lawn with such force, I thought the stake might break. As she looked up and caught my eye across the street, I saw something I'd never seen before in Karen Matthews's face: genuine fear. The woman who'd terrorized our neighborhood with petty power trips and arbitrary rules had finally run up against real authority federal law and discovered that her little kingdom wasn't above it. 2 weeks later, Tyler was racing other kids on their bikes up and down our street, his wheelchair keeping pace effortlessly. Karen's house sold to a lovely family with 3 kids and a golden retriever who definitely don't fit the old HOA president's idea of community standards. And you know what? The neighborhood has never been more peaceful. Funny how that works out when bullies finally face real consequences. Sometimes justice takes a while, but when it comes, it's beautiful to watch. Her expression didn't change. I understand that, but procedures are procedures. You'll need to remove it and submit an application for review. The next board meeting isn't until next month. I felt my blood pressure rising. You want me to trap a disabled child in my house for a month while you debate whether he deserves basic access? I want you to follow the rules like everyone else, she replied coolly. You have 48 hours to remove the unauthorized structure, or you'll face a $100 daily fine. She turned and walked away before I could respond, leaving me standing there in complete disbelief. Spent that day researching everything I could about HOA rules and disability rights. Turns out, the Americans with Disabilities Act is pretty clear about this stuff: reasonable accommodations for disabled individuals can't be denied by HOAs, regardless of their bylaws. I printed out the relevant sections and walked over to Karen's house that evening. She answered the door in a silk robe, clearly annoyed by the interruption. James, if this is about that ramp— It is, I said, handing her the papers. This is the ADA documentation showing that you can't legally prevent reasonable accommodations for disabled residents. The ramp stays. She barely glanced at the documents. Our HOA bylaws predate the ADA. We're grandfathered in. No, Karen, you're not. Federal law supersedes HOA rules. Always. Her face hardened. We'll see about that. The next morning, I woke up to Tyler crying in the living room. I rushed out to find him staring at our front entrance in his wheelchair, tears streaming down his face. Uncle James, he said, his voice shaking. Someone took my ramp. I looked outside and felt my heart sink. The ramp was completely gone. Not moved, not folded up, vanished. Through the window, I could see kids playing in the street, and Tyler had been so excited to join them after breakfast. Carried Tyler down the steps and got him settled where he could watch the other kids play, then marched straight to Karen's house. Her pristine white colonial sat at the end of our cul-de-sac like a monument to suburban perfection. I pounded on her door until she answered, wearing a tennis outfit despite never playing tennis. Where is it? I demanded. Where is what? She asked innocently. Tyler's wheelchair ramp. I know you took it. She adjusted her visor and smiled. I had the HOA maintenance crew remove an unauthorized structure, as is our right under the enforcement provisions of our bylaws. That ramp cost $600. Karen, more importantly, it's medical equipment. You've essentially stolen medical equipment from a disabled child. I've enforced community standards, she replied smugly. Perhaps next time you'll follow proper procedures. Where is the ramp now? Her smile widened. Disposed of. We can't have unauthorized materials cluttering up the community. Felt something snap inside me. You threw away a child's medical equipment? I removed a bylaw violation. If you continue this harassment, I'll have to file a complaint about your hostile behavior. I pulled out my phone and took a picture of her standing there in her tennis outfit. Still smiling. What are you doing? She snapped. Documenting the person who just admitted to destroying medical equipment. The police are going to love this. Her smile finally faltered. You can't prove anything. Actually, Karen, I can. And I will. I walked away as she shouted threats behind me about additional fines and board actions. But I wasn't done. Not even close. First, I called the police and filed a report for theft and destruction of medical equipment, worth over $500, which made it a felony in our state. Then I called a disability rights attorney my research had turned up. When I explained what happened, I could practically hear him rubbing his hands together. This is a slam dunk case, he said. Willful ADA violation, destruction of medical equipment, theft. She's looking at serious criminal charges. Not to mention civil liability. By Thursday, Karen had received a certified letter from my attorney outlining the multiple federal crimes she'd committed. By Friday, 2 other families had come forward with their own stories about Karen's discriminatory enforcement against residents with disabilities. Karen's response was to call an emergency HOA meeting for that weekend. The community center was packed. I'd never seen so many neighbors at an HOA meeting before. Karen stood at the podium, red-faced and clutching her bylaws like a security blanket. We have a resident attempting to circumvent our established procedures. She began glaring at me. If we allow one unauthorized modification, we'll have chaos. People will think they can do whatever they want. When she finished her rant, I stood up and asked for permission to address the board. I'd like to discuss the theft and destruction of medical equipment from my property, I said calmly. Equipment that was legally protected under federal disability law. That's a lie, Karen shouted. The HOA has enforcement rights. I have security camera footage of you directing the removal, I continued. This was a bluff, but Karen's face went white, so I pressed on. I also have the receipt for the destroyed equipment, medical documentation of its necessity, and statements from disability rights, advocates about the severity of this violation. The room went dead silent. Even Karen's usual supporters on the board were staring at their shoes. Furthermore, I continued, I've been in contact with the district attorney's office about pressing criminal charges for theft over $500, destruction of medical equipment, and conspiracy to violate civil rights. You know that feeling when you think you know someone's limits, but then they surprise you by going even lower? That's exactly what happened with Karen Matthews, our HOA president here in Whispering Pines. For 2 years, she'd been the neighborhood's self-appointed sheriff, prowling around with her measuring tape and citation book, making everyone's life miserable over paint colors and lawn heights. But I never imagined she'd literally destroy a child's wheelchair. And I definitely never thought I'd be the one to watch her get arrested for it. Let me back up. My name's James, and I've lived in this cookie-cutter subdivision for about 5 years now. It's one of those places where every house looks identical except for the approved color variations beige, slightly darker beige, or winter wheat, as the HOA calls it. Karen had been president since I moved in, and she ran the place like her personal kingdom. Everything changed when my sister Rebecca asked if she and her family could stay with me for a couple months, while their house was being renovated after a pipe burst. Of course I said yes. Rebecca's got 2 kids, my 8-year-old niece, Maya, and my 10-year-old nephew, Tyler, who has spina bifida and uses a wheelchair. Tyler's this incredible kid, By the way, he's got more determination in his pinky finger than most adults have in their whole body. He plays wheelchair basketball, he's teaching himself guitar, and he never lets his disability slow him down. But our subdivision wasn't exactly built with accessibility in mind. The day they moved in, I realized we had a problem. My front entrance has 3 concrete steps, and there was no way Tyler could get in and out independently. So I did what any reasonable person would do. I ordered a portable aluminum wheelchair ramp online. Nothing fancy, nothing permanent, just a fold-out ramp that could hook over the steps so Tyler could come and go like any other kid. The ramp arrived on a Tuesday. I set it up that afternoon and Tyler was thrilled. For the first time since arriving, he could wheel himself outside to play with the neighborhood. Kids without needing someone to carry him up and down the steps. Wednesday morning, 7 a.m. sharp, my doorbell rang. I stumbled to answer it, still in my pajamas, and there was Karen Matthews in all her glory. Perfectly styled blonde bob, designer tracksuit, and that infamous clipboard that struck fear into every homeowner's heart. "Good morning, James," she said with that fake smile that made my skin crawl. "I noticed you've installed an unauthorized structure." I blinked, trying to wake up. "What structure?" She pointed at Tyler's ramp with a manicured nail. "That. It's a violation of Section E 15.3 of our architectural guidelines. All exterior modifications require pre-approval from the HOA board." "Karen, it's a wheelchair ramp for my nephew. He's 10 years old and needs it to get in and out of the house."